I will say the principal truths twice. If you don't get them written down, don't worry about it, because next week I will give you a handout with the central truth and principal truths from this week and for next week, okay? So don't panic if you don't get it all down, okay? Okay, the central truth for the story of the Samaritan woman at the well is this. On any given day, any given conversation has the potential to have eternal significance on someone's eternal destiny. One more time. On any given day, any given conversation has the potential to have eternal significance on someone's eternal destiny. Okay, well, we have all heard the Bible story in John chapter 4 of the woman at the well, that Jesus asked for water. We have heard the story all of our church-going lives. But today, we're going to look at this story from a slightly different perspective. We're going to look at this story from the Samaritan woman's point of view. How did she feel? What was she thinking? And finally, how was her life changed? But before we do that, let's take a look at the status of women in the time of Jesus. So this will give us a better understanding of how things were and how women were treated back in those days. Their society was very different with their attitude towards women than it is now. So I think that knowing a little historical facts will give us a better understanding of just who this Samaritan woman was and why our Lord speaking to her was such a clear picture for us, an example to us about loving those who we consider to be unlovely. In the time of Jesus, men dominated the world. Romans, Greeks, Jews, and Gentiles gave women nothing more than a second-rate status. They were useful tools in a male-dominated society. They were to cook meals, bear and raise children, play whatever role was assigned to them within the walls of their homes. By and large, women were under the dominion of men. They were considered property that was transferred from father to husband. In the Old Testament, men thanked God that they were not dogs, Gentiles, or women. And still today in some Middle Eastern cultures, this sentiment is still shared. Women were not allowed to give public witness in court. In fact, Jewish women were required to lead in the funeral procession, since Hebrew men felt that they were responsible for introducing death into the world. And this goes back, of course, to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Gentile women were even lower than Jewish women. In fact, in Barakah 58a, a woman was designated an animal, more precisely a she-ass, a donkey. In ancient Greece, a respectable woman was not allowed to leave the house unless she was accompanied by a trustworthy male escort. A wife was not permitted to eat or interact with a male guest in her husband's home. She had to retire to the women's quarters, which she was probably grateful for that, I would have been. Men kept their wives under lock and key. Women had the status of a slave. Girls were not allowed to go to school. And when they grew up, they were not allowed to speak in public. Women were equated with evil. And the status of Roman women wasn't much better. She was placed under absolute control of her husband, who had ownership of her and all of her possessions. He could divorce her if she went out of the house without her veil around her. And her husband had power over life and death, not only on her, but her children as well. So at the time of Jesus, not only was all this going on, but they had oral rabbinic laws that stated several things. And one of those laws at that time was that a woman, it was said that he who talks to a woman in public brings evil upon himself. And another rabbinic teaching that was prominent in the day of Jesus was that no one was so much to even greet a woman. So having said all of this about the status of women in the Old Testament in the days of Jesus here on earth, it's really nothing short of incredible that he would not only speak to her, but have a complete conversation with her. He reached out and not only showed her love, but he also gave salvation to somebody who was truly, truly considered unlovely in that time. So that brings us to the well. And this particular well was on the way to Galilee as Jesus made his way from Galilee to Judea. He was traveling from going to Judea. And he stopped in this little town by this well, and the town was called Shechar. And interestingly enough, Shechar is near the plot of ground that Jacob gave his son Joseph, and it's known as Jacob's well. My question to Chris was, is this the well that the brothers threw Joseph down? It's not that well, so I was glad I asked, because I might have said, this could have been the well, but it's not. This well is made of limestone, and it is very, very deep, and it is fed by underground springs, and that would keep it very cool and refreshing. And that well is still there to this day. Whether it's operational, I don't know, but the well is still there. So Jesus was making his journey in about the 6th hour, and it was probably very hot and thirsty and tired. And I'm sure he was ready for a rest in some of that very cold water from that deep, dark well. And so he sat on the side of the well, and he was weary from that dusty journey. And he glanced up, and what did he see? But he saw this woman, looking haggard and dejected, walking towards him. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back in time a little bit, okay? And we're going to look at it from the woman's point of view. And we're just going to see what she thought about this. We're going to imagine, of course, what she might have thought, what might have been going through her mind. But let's just examine this. So, walking to the well that day to fetch some water for my household, I felt like I was at a breaking point. I really didn't care about anything anymore. I was just ready to give up. I didn't even care about life anymore. Nothing in my life had ever gone right. It was just the same thing day after day after day. Nothing ever seemed to work out, especially with relationships. I had 5 husbands. You'd think I'd know what I was looking for. But no, and here I am again in another hopelessly bad situation. I was wondering if I could ever find happiness, some kind of meaning in my life. When I looked up, and there, as I was approaching the well, I saw a man. And it wasn't just any man, it was a Jewish man. I stopped dead in my tracks. I should have turned. I should have ran. I should have headed back. But this Jewish man, there was such a presence about him. It was this incredible peace came upon me, and I was being drawn to him like a magnet. I couldn't keep my eyes off of him. So as I slowly walked towards him, I was almost in some kind of trance. And as I approached, he said to me, "Will you give me a drink?" I said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" He said, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Well, I had no idea what he was talking about. So I said, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is very deep. Where do you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as he did his sons and his herds and his flock? And he said to me, everyone who drinks from this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will come in him a spring of water, welling up eternal life. Well, this just sounded way too good to be true. No more trips to the stinking well. I mean, could it really be? So I said, sir, give me this water so that I don't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. And he looked at me with the most amazing eyes I've ever seen, and he said to me, go, call your husband. I told him I have no husband. And he said, y'all aren't going to believe what he said to me. He said, you are right when you say you have no husband. Fact is, you have 5 husbands. And the man you are with now is not your husband. What you just said is quite true. I was dumbstruck. I didn't know what to say. But then I said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped here on this mountain. But you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. And the most amazing thing, he said, believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you don't even know. For salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has come now when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and truth. Oh, y'all, I could have listened to him all day. He was so kind, and he spoke with such tremendous authority. And then I said to him, I know the Messiah called Christ is coming, and when he comes, he will explain everything to us. Still, unable to take my eyes off him, he said, I who speak to you am he. I knew with every fiber of my being that he was who he said he was, Christ, the Messiah. Well, just then all of his friends came up and I got so excited I dropped the water jar and I ran back to town and I told everybody, come, see a man who just told me everything I had ever done. Could this be the Christ? Well, the people came out of town and they made their way towards him, and when the Samaritans came, they urged him to stay, and he stayed for 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. And they said to me, little old me, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. Again, the central truth is on any given day, any given conversation has the potential to have eternal significance on someone's eternal destiny. Well, from that point on, having become a believer in Jesus Christ, her life could not have become anything other than to live as a godly woman. What a drastic change her life must have taken. She now knew that the love that had been missing, all of her life. The true love of God. Her search to find that missing piece that would make her happy is finally over. And it was a man that filled the void in her life. But this man was the Son of God, Jesus Christ. So that leads us to one question. How was she, and how are you and I, to live as women of God? Well, a true woman of God lives a God-centered life. She trusts God in any and all circumstances and situations. She is patient, and she seeks and awaits God's answers to all her prayers. And the principal truth is this: patience means waiting and trusting, even when you think Patience means waiting and trusting